Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2020 Justin and Tyler Movie Awards, and here's one of the big ones, our top 5 worst movies of 2020. Tyler is going to kick us off with his honorable mentions. I will do my honorable mentions, and then we will go number 5 to number 1, the absolute worst thing we saw put on film this year.
My dishonorable mentions are The Lovebirds, Rogue, Disturbing the Peace, The Kindness of Strangers, Hubie Halloween, Survive the Night, and The Last Thing He Wanted.
Ooh,
I don't really have a whole lot to say about. I mean, Hubie Halloween is a stupid Adam Sandler movie. I don't like him. I really don't. I like him in some serious roles sometimes, but I really don't like his humor. And then The Last Thing He Wanted, wasn't it that movie that Criticker chose my review for?
Yes.
And their
that was their number 1 worst thing.
And they chose Loud Mini Review.
You are all over that site.
Yeah, because I've been paying them off.
Exactly. all that internet money just going funneled straight to where are they based in? Denmark?
I don't know.
So my honorable mentions this year, I only have one because I really did not seek out bad movies at all this year. I had to prioritize the good ones in a year that we went so long without in-theater movie experiences. So my only one honorable mention is this year's version of The Grudge. And it's one of those things where, it's not as, laughably bad as the original remake of the original Ju-on The Grudge. Yeah. It's not as intentionally laughably bad as that. So it's an improvement for this franchise, if you want to call it that, because it's not a remake, it's not a sequel, it's like a sister film to something, I think is how it was described, and it's, it kind of is what it is. I just kind of get the feeling that, if all it took for everyone to be haunted by this thing was for one person to die really angry, I feel like this would have happened by now. So the premise is just a little unbelievable for me in my horror movies.
With my number 5, we're going to start this off with a bang.
Okay.
Because we're going to go with the latest Spike Lee joint, The Five Bloods.
Ooh, okay, because this is showing up on some people's best lists.
But not this guy's.
Right. Okay.
Let's start off with the good. The second half is better than the first.
Okay.
Lindo's character he's pretty good, but I feel like the character itself is unevenly written.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on Spike Lee movies.
Right.
I have only seen, I think, 4 now, because I just watched, Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
And I have such a conflicting view on him so far. So this may not be true for his whole filmography, but it's just what I've noticed so far. I just find him wildly inconsistent. He demonstrates at times real brilliance, from scene to scene, and I think this guy's a really great director, but then he throws in some shit that's so amateurish. This movie has some of the most atrocious musical selection I've seen in a movie, and it completely zaps all the emotion and intensity from it. There's awkward transitions, uneven dialogue. I don't see the appeal. I guess I just don't. I don't get it.
I don't get it.
Because I know it's not the most beloved movie of the year in terms of reception, but I know people quite enjoy it, and I just couldn't. I was watching and I just couldn't understand why people loved this. Because even as much as I really liked Malcolm X, I noticed some scenes that were so friggin' awkward that I was like, why would a guy so talented put this in? In The Five Bloods, it's some of it seems like straight to TV like movie or like a bad YouTube video.
Oh wow.
So I don't like The Five Bloods.
My number 5 worst movie of 2020 is going to be a real quick one because I've talked about it multiple times. It's Honest Thief, Liam Neeson and Kate Walsh, directed by, what was the director's name? Mark Williams, who's a name I had never heard before. I'm just rehashing stuff I've already talked about. It's sound design by a loaf of bread. It's mediocre storytelling. It's not great performances. It's awful production. Like across the board, it's like there is very little, if any, care put into this. And what I found more so this year than in years past, I've been really praising investment and really criticizing lack of it, right? So it's like when you can tell that there's a lack of investment in making the movie, that's as quick a way as any to get on my bad side, and this unfortunately did. So Honest Thief winds up being my number 5.
I didn't say it, so I can't comment.
You saved yourself.
My number 4, continuing with the bag, is The Grudge.
Oh, there you go.
So this is better than the like original American version, but sadly it was, you know, one of the worst movies of the year still. I've never found the throat noises scary at all.
No.
It's never. And I guess ultimately it just becomes a very boring horror movie that doesn't build to its scares at all.
No, definitely not.
That's like what it is. It's not visually interesting enough, and it doesn't build, so it's just like, ooh, jump scare, yeah, but I don't really care.
And it's like that was the criticism of the original one too. It was just like when you have that, or you could go see Saw.
Yeah.
It's like, so you could go see Jump Scare Fest or go see something that actually builds something, right?
I feel like I should just watch the like original Japanese
Ju-on,
version.
yeah.
And because there's obviously a story here that wants to be told, and that apparently tells it pretty well. So maybe I should just go back and watch at least the original Ju-on.
The Grudge may be a great example of America. You don't always just have to remake something that another country already made.
Yeah.
Maybe just import that thing that they already made. My number 4 worst movie of 2020 is Monster Hunter, starring Mila Jovovich and Tony Jaa, directed by like a talented director, Paul W.S. Anderson. Like he's done some stuff, right? But Monster Hunter is the story of a military squad who are basically out searching for comrades and teammates that have gone missing, and they get pulled into this strange storm in the middle of the desert, and all of a sudden they've been pulled into the new world, the world of monsters. This movie, to me, has virtually no actual connection to the Monster Hunter games. There are very, very, very few connections. And you have to be like a deep cuts Monster Hunter fan to find the connections. But it's like, they wanted to make, this is exactly the sci-fi movie that they wanted to make, but to give Mila Jovovich an excuse to be in another video game movie, they decided to call it Monster Hunter. And like very, very, very loosely connected to Monster Hunter. I think like a couple of the weapons are like weapons from Monster Hunter, but it's just like there's almost no marriage to the source material at all, but they just kind of thought they'd get more traction by calling it Monster Hunter.
I just find it weird that they would have chosen Monster Hunter, because the games, not that I'm some scholar on the games because I don't actually care for them that much, but you just spend a lot of time hunting monsters, getting the right gear, finding ways to kill them. And
Crafting.
Crafting and stuff. It's like, this is such a weird property.
Yeah.
It's almost like, it could be either what you said, or it's almost like they think, ooh, Monster Hunter's a really cool title.
Yeah.
Like, let's just, what's not cool about hunting monsters? Like, yeah, but the game is like 100 hours of crafting.
Right.
So, yeah, it's something that doesn't work as well in a movie format if you want to capture the essence of Monster Hunter.
Right. Yeah. If you actually want to make a game about the monster or movie about the Monster Hunter games, like you can, but it's not going to be this movie. And add on top of that, at the end of this movie stops short of dropping to its knees and begging for a sequel. Like, the end of this movie is such blatant sequel begging. I was laughing at the end of this movie. I'm like, they want a sequel to this so bad they can taste it, because they know this one's not good.
My number 3 is I Am Vengeance Retaliation, a sequel to an incredibly forgettable movie starring Bad News Barrett, like Wade Barrett, whatever his real name.
Oh my god!
Right? So, it's just like the most anticlimactic action movie I've ever seen, because like something cool happens, like, oh, a chase scene? Nope, the guy just kind of, because they're chasing this guy, right? Mm-hmm. So then it's like they chase him. It's like, oh, we're gonna have a chase scene. Now the guy just ends up going willingly. It's like, we're gonna have a cool fight? Nah. And then even when the action does happen, it's just like stand there and shoot like basic action movies, action sequences, right? And you know, it's a very simple formula. They spoke their stupid one-liners, and I only watched this because I saw the original. I was like, I might as well watch the sequel too.
I'm pot committed now.
Yeah. So I'll probably watch the third one if they make a third one, but I really don't enjoy them at all. Although the first one was forgettable, but like mildly okay.
You know what? A surefire way to have a good quality movie on your hand? Cast Bad News Barrett.
Yeah.
Here's a spoiler. Okay, so I didn't watch that movie, but here's a spoiler. This is not the last time that a movie featuring a professional wrestler winds up on one of these lists. My number 3 worst movie of 2020 is Fantasy Island, starring Michael Pena, Jimmy O. Yang, and it's directed by, I think it was David Wadlow? Jeff Wadlow, sorry about that. So it's a film prequel to the late 70s TV show about a supernatural wish-granting island. Now, this is supposed to be a horror comedy, because there are definitely comedy elements in there as well as horror elements. The thing about horror comedy, and I know I've talked about this in years past, and you even kind of alluded to it earlier in these recordings today. The thing about horror comedy is either do both well, or you're going to wind up doing neither. And that's exactly what Fantasy Island was. It's not scary enough to fulfill horror heads. It's no fun at all, so it doesn't fulfill the comedy seekers at all. So you're either going to be both, or you're going to be neither, and Fantasy Island winds up being neither. Even in a situation where you have the antagonist really getting his comeuppance at the end, there's no satisfaction in it, because by that point, nobody really cares. So Fantasy Island winds up being my number 3, and it wasn't one that I thought I was going to love by any means. I just kind of thought, okay, this will be somewhere in the middle of the road. Maybe if I'm lucky, it latches onto the tail end of my top 30, who knows? But I certainly didn't expect it to be as almost unwatchable as it wound up being, and that's why it winds up number 3.
I avoided that one.
Specifically?
I was like, I'm not gonna put myself through that.
Right.
My time is valuable.
Exactly.
So I'd rather just watch this Wade Barrett movie. My number 2 is Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, no.
Do you remember, I don't remember what year it was, when I sat here and sang the praises of Nicolas Cage.
I do remember that.
And gave him an award for Best Actor that year.
I do remember that.
And I took so much joy in it. And I took no joy in this movie whatsoever. Now, mind you, he's not the lead character technically, but I still consider it a Nicolas Cage movie because it's Nicolas Cage.
Right. His name's going to be the one on the marquee.
Yeah. It's just very generic. Like, it does all the things that a truly bad movie does. It lacks oomph in any of the action. The story and characterization basically just consists of people yelling plot points in order to advance the plot. Like, there's no depth to it, right? It's just like,
hey, what about this?
Yeah, jujitsu! it's like, you gotta understand jujitsu, and they're like throwing kicks and shit. And it's like hold on a second. Yeah, it's like, hold up, guys. If you were to say like what are the worst movies of the year, then this like fits the template. It's like the jujitsu template of worst movie of the year. So.
You know what movie's bad? When it becomes a template.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that is one that I kind of specifically avoided. Well, I can't say I specifically avoided it. I did have it downloaded at one point. But then once I thought that I had watched enough bad movies this year, I was like, okay, don't need this one anymore. Got rid of it.
I reviewed it because it was a new movie and I thought I should review it.
Yeah.
So that's why I watched it.
Well, there you go. Mistakes were made. My number 2 worst movie of 2020, and like I mentioned, it wouldn't be the last time that a professional wrestler's movie would wind up on this list. And it sucks in this case because it's a professional wrestler I really, really like. And I so badly wanted to at least tolerate this movie just for his sake. The movie's called Money Plane. It stars Kelsey Grammer. It's directed by Andrew Lawrence and stars Adam Copeland, who is better known as Edge in the WWE.
Right.
So Money Plane is a movie about a thief and a gambler played by Adam Copeland who is tasked with taking down like a flying casino.
Casino.
Just like this giant plane, this undetectable plane in the sky where all these high rollers are like gambling and everything. So it's just like this huge, and it's all done in Bitcoin because of course it is, because it's 2020. Bitcoin's ridiculous. Anyways, I won't go on my cryptocurrency rant. It's kind of secondary to the movie. So Adam Copeland, he has a false identity, gets his way onto this plane to try to take all the Bitcoins. This movie includes, but is not limited to, close-range gunfights where no one gets shot. These guys have worse aim than stormtroopers. They could be as close as Tyler and I are to the wall behind the camera and be shooting at each other and no one gets hit.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I could shoot somebody from this close.
Yeah, no kidding.
It features that. It also features flashbacks to scenes that finished within the most recent 90 seconds. A scene would happen, and then they'd do a flashback to that scene that just finished. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're trying to do directing this. Like, what could this possibly... And the reason that I call it masturbatory is it's one of these instances where Andrew Lawrence directed it, Andrew Lawrence wrote it, Andrew Lawrence produced it. This is a Tommy Wiseau movie. And I think he might have even had family members that starred in the thing. So it was very much a passion project for him about this casino in the sky, and wound up being awful.
That could actually be cool if done well.
It could kind of be a cool concept. It felt like a James Bond concept.
Yeah.
That, like, James Bond gets an identity, and there's this flying casino. Like, it seems like something that Ian Fleming would have written for James Bond. Yeah. Instead, it was something Andrew Lawrence wrote for Adam Copeland. It's just like, doesn't quite work out. And look, I understand, if you saw this movie and actually liked it, I understand that tastes differ. And I also understand that this movie is intended to be a comedy. It's not a serious movie. But it also intentionally hides the fact that it's a comedy until, like, the midway point of the movie when they swing it on you that it's a comedy. And by that point, it's moot because the movie sucks. So it doesn't matter if it's a comedy or not. Whether it's a comedy or it plays it straight, it sucks either way. So that's how it wound up as number 2. The second worst thing that I saw all year.
Terrible. Sounds terrible.
And I feel bad for Adam Copeland. I really do. Because he's really good on Vikings.
So my number 1 is going to be short because I talked about it, but it's Last and First Men.
Oh, wow. Yeah, fair enough.
I can't believe I hated. Well, I truly did hate it because it was the worst movie of the year. But for those who didn't see the miscellaneous awards video, I'll just say, I'll repeat a point I made. It's like the first 5 minutes of a sci-fi movie stretched out to 75 minutes or whatever it is. The narration, it's like that would be so fitting in a science fiction movie. Like, we live in a world. I don't know actually what she's saying, but like it would be like watching a sci-fi movie. It's like the world has been devastated, right? And that's okay for the first couple of minutes, and then stuff happens. Well, stuff doesn't happen in this. The only thing I like is I like the soundtrack and some of the shots, but then he just repeats the shot. The visuals get boring because like they're kind of cool at first, and you're just like, oh, he's just going back to the well.
Yeah.
For like similar imagery.
In the same movie, no less.
Yeah, so I feel bad, as I said in the miscellaneous awards, because it was his directorial debut, and unfortunately his only movie because he passed. And I like him as a composer, but I do not like Last and First Men at all.
Yeah. And here we go, folks. My number one worst movie of 2020 is a movie called Assassin 33 AD. So, this movie stars Morgan Roberts. You don't know who that is, and that's fine. Also stars an actress by the name of Isla Levine. You don't know who that is either, and that's perfectly fine. It was directed by a man named Jim Carroll. You don't know who that is either, and that's also perfectly fine. Would you like to know what the premise of this movie is, Tyler?
Yes.
Okay. Terrorists hatch a plot to invent time travel to go back and prevent Jesus. That's the premise of the movie.
Yeah, well,
I will let you guess who these terrorists might be. For the most part, I have nothing against Christian or Catholic films. For the most part. I usually just leave them be because I'm like, I kind of understand what you're ultimately going to be going for.
yeah.
And that's fine. I got no problem with it.
Yeah.
I watched this one because someone described it to me as the worst thing they'd ever watched. And I went, wow, imagine the territory that covers. So as soon as I started watching, pretty well about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes in, I'm like, okay, so this movie, in the first 2.5 minutes, a family gets hit by a car. Not a person, a family gets hit by a car. And I laughed. And I shouldn't have laughed because it wasn't a funny scene.
No, they deserved it.
But it was because just before it happened, the Stepford wife was just like, oh, you know, I just think God put you on the planet for miraculous reasons. Wham! And I'm like, that's supposed to be an emotional beat. And it's not, because the movie's been playing for 2.5 minutes. We don't even know who these people are.
Yeah.
We have no emotional attachment to them whatsoever.
Yeah.
By the end of this movie, I thought, wow, this should be offensive to the very people it's marketed towards. No, I mean, this was irredeemable slop. I mean, it was filmed terribly. You have bargain, you know, you got like dollar store Bradley Cooper as one of the characters. The husband, the one that survives the car crash, because one always has to survive the car crash, because that's not a trope. There's another trope that should die in 2020. The one person that survives the car crash. So, like, you got dollar store Bradley Cooper there. You got, like, more buff Sheldon Cooper over here.
Oh, Jesus.
Every part of this movie is bad. There is nothing. Usually almost any movie I watch, unless it's Shudder. Like,
I knew that was coming.
Absolutely. Usually almost any movie I watch, there's something in there. And maybe the only redeemable part of this was it gave me a laugh at the beginning. Maybe that's the only thing I can clutch onto. But Assassin 33 AD, where a terrorist, because of reasons, decides if we prevent Jesus, we win? Question mark. That's the whole premise of the movie. And goddamn, why would you waste my time like this? You awful, awful people who made this movie. That's my number one.
Because the world is terrible, and they succeeded in killing Jesus, and this is what we're left with.
Well, look.
That movie's real life, man.
It was a documentary. Damn.
You didn't realize that.
Well, best movie of the year then. So there you go, folks. Last and First Men and Assassin 33 AD. Those were our two worst movies of 2020. Thank you very much for listening to that portion of the list. And now, coming up next, you'll notice a costume change, I'm sure, because starting tomorrow, our filming begins on our top 30 best movies of 2020. It is the big one, probably in 3 separate videos, but we will begin on the next video, number 30 through number 21 of our best movies of 2020. We'll see you then.